Well, good morning. Oh, no one's awake. No one's out there. Good morning. That's better. That was more confident, I must say. I'm going to talk to you this morning about, you might think this has nothing to do with testing, but actually it is, because I've got to let you in on a secret. All testers are human beings. Okay? And that includes all of you are human beings. And as human beings, we have certain characteristics. And that's really what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the tester's 3 C's: criticism, communication, and confidence. And I have a somewhat unusual summary of the last point at the end of the presentation. So we're going to look at criticism, what is criticism, different types of criticism, and how to respond to criticism, and how to criticize effectively. I think it's important to look at what happens when you are criticized first, because you feel different when you are criticized than when you're criticizing somebody else. Then we'll look at different ways of communicating, particularly push and pull style, which is an important way to be more effective at communicating, perhaps especially with higher level managers. And we'll also look at Virginia Satir's communication interaction model, and then we'll look at confidence. So, what is it that testers actually do? Whether you call yourself a tester or QA or quality analyst, we are looking at other people's work, right? We are criticizing other people's work. We investigate things, we check things, we find out if they're working right. We think of things that nobody else thought of. That's the real tester's mindset. The tester's mindset is to say, well, what if, or what could go wrong? So we are thinking of things that they haven't thought of, so we are criticizing, and we apply it to other people's work. So we criticize. We are professional critics. I found this on a little card once. You're doing a great job, but you're doing it all wrong. That's how we are often perceived. Well, probably not even the first part. So what is criticism? Well, I like looking in the dictionary, and it comes from the Greek krites, which means to judge. And Wikipedia definitions, the first one, examination, analysis, interpretation, judgment. That sounds pretty good, right? And that's a fairly neutral description of what criticism is. It actually can be quite positive. People sometimes talk about constructive criticism as opposed to destructive criticism. Now, a couple other definitions in Wikipedia: disapproval, expressed by pointing out faults and shortcomings. Well, that is negative, right? And there's a third definition: a spoken or written attack on somebody. Now that's even more negative. So maybe we are intending our criticism in the first sense as being a constructive, here's how you might like to improve, and they are taking it in the other way. This often happens. Has anyone experienced this? Yes? Now, there are 3 types of criticism. There's valid criticism, where the criticism does have an element of truth in it. It might not be completely true, but there is certainly something there. But there's also unjustified or invalid criticism, where you might be criticized for something which, actually, no, that's not the way it was at all. Have you ever suffered from that? And criticized, and no, you're wrong, that's not what happened? If you don't live up to someone else's fantasy of what they think you should be like. And the third one is vague criticism. It's hard to tell whether it's justified or not justified. And it's perhaps just a difference of opinion, and it says more about the critic than actually the criticism itself. Now, think back to the last time someone criticized you. Have you been criticized recently? Has someone said something to you that was negative in a sense, or was an improvement opportunity for you? And how did you feel when you were criticized? Did you welcome the criticism? Or did you react to it in some way? Well, when we are criticized, we do go through certain stages. And the first one is awareness. Oh, you're criticizing me. And then there's a response. And there are 2 responses which are fairly typical to happen sort of immediately, the natural reactions. The 2 extremes are either a counterattack, oh, that's not right. You got the whole wrong end of the stick, and immediately become defensive. And the other extreme is just to collapse in on yourself and say, I'm always doing things wrong, or something like that. Now, obviously, probably most reactions are somewhere in between, but your reaction will be something in between these extremes. Now, that's not necessarily the best reaction, either of these extremes. A better way to react is to assess the criticism and react differently depending on what type of criticism it is. So you can also use assertive techniques to respond to criticism, which is a way of responding to it, which is not either accepting it or fighting against it. And then after this response, hopefully there will be some action, because the point of a criticism is to try and make some improvement. And if someone is criticizing you, remember, it's good to remember that as well. They are trying to help you improve something. So there would be hopefully some action that comes about as a result of the criticism. So here's an example of a way you can respond to a criticism, particularly if it's a vague criticism or an unjustified one. One is called fogging. And you acknowledge there may be some truth in what they say, but you don't actually accept it. It's not a yes, but it's a listening and a reflecting technique. So, for example, if your boss comes along and says, the testing can't possibly take this long, what's your initial reaction? Well, one thing you could say with the fogging technique is you could say, you're right, you don't see how the testing could possibly take this long. Okay? You're not saying you're right, the testing shouldn't take this long. You're not saying you're wrong. You're saying, I heard what you say. You just said you don't think the testing should take this long. Now, of course, by responding in that way, what are they going to say next? Well, what I mean is the testing can't possibly take that long. We don't have that much time. And in that case, then what do you do? Well, you might say, perhaps you know more about this than we do. Perhaps we could have your valued technical judgment to help us decide what we could leave out of the testing so that we can fit it in the time. Try and say it not sarcastically, okay? That might be a possible response. Now, if the criticism is valid, and you're right. I mean, have you ever had a speeding ticket? Yeah, I have as well. Yeah, okay, right, I was going too fast. If it's valid, the best thing to do is admit the truth. If you deny the truth, everybody else knows it's the truth. You're only fooling yourself. So if it is a valid criticism, accept it and try and do something about it so that you can improve. And one way that you can do that is to request specific feedback, which will lead into action. So advice for receiving criticism, some do's and don'ts. Do realize when someone criticizes you, they might have a point. They might have something valid to help you. Put it in perspective. Don't let it take over your whole world. Discuss it openly. Work through it to try and find a way to fix the problem, and make a plan for doing something about it and get feedback on that plan. Would this improve? Okay, you're right. This is something I shouldn't have done. I'd like to do better next time. If I do this, would this help? And some don'ts. Don't ignore it. If someone criticizes you, something has happened or you have done something which has made them sufficiently agitated or, I don't know, sometimes angry, that they have actually gone to the point of criticizing you. So they have actually been pushed into a point where they have felt a need to respond. Some people, I suppose, would respond very quickly. Others, it would take a lot. Don't assume they are wrong, because they might have a point. Don't argue, don't become defensive, and don't be anxious. Now, of course, that's easy to say, right? But that's the idea. Now, what about giving criticism? When did you last criticize somebody? I mean, maybe it was as a tester criticizing a developer's work, or maybe it was to a colleague criticizing something that they do that you find upsets you or annoys you. When did you last criticize somebody? How did it go? Was it, I see some people smiling. Was it a success? Was it a disaster? It's hard. I have always found it really hard to criticize. I'm one of these, I don't like confrontation type people, but I've learned that sometimes you have to confront. I remember one of the very first consultancy jobs I ever did. There was a guy there who was very antagonistic. We were trying to do reviews, and he had spent longer on his work than the others had had time for, so there were fewer mistakes in his. But he was always, "Oh, that's wrong. You're dead wrong. This is stupid." He was very antagonistic, and I could see it was upsetting everybody else in the team. But he was a stickler for standards. We must follow the standards. You haven't followed the standards here. And, how am I going to get through to this guy? And in the end, I went to him afterwards and I said, "I know you're really keen on standards." Yes, he said. "Well, actually, the standards for a review meeting are that you are not antagonistic. You are not following the standards for the review meeting." I've never really heard whether that was effective or not, but I think at least it gave him pause for thought. But it is hard to think of what to say. But there is something that will help, and it's called a DASR script. Basically, there are 4 steps to it, as you might expect. The first step is to describe the specific behavior. So in my example, I described the behavior that this guy had in the review meeting. And then if I had been someone in the team, I would have then said, "That makes me feel really bad because I've worked very hard on this and you are just trashing it." And then specify the different behavior that you would like. I mean, in this case, I said that he should behave differently in a review meeting. And then reaffirm their worth at the end. So for example, if your boss says, the testing is taking too long, you might say, last time when you said that the testing couldn't have the allotted time that I'd estimated, when you tell me that, I feel that all the effort I put into trying to estimate the testing and how long it would take has not been listened to, has not been heard, has not been taken into account. What I would prefer is that next time we go through together and spend a little bit of time and just decide which are the most important things we need to test so that we can decide what we don't need to test. And in that way, we will do the best testing that we can in the limited time we have available. So you're reaffirming the worth at the end. So we're aiming for realistic mutual goals and expectations. Now, when we write a bug report, it's actually similar because we have the specific behavior when the software does this. When this is input, the effect is the software does something it shouldn't do. And what it should do is this. This is the expected result. And it might be okay now and then to say to the developers, but it's a nice feature. Okay, we spend so much time telling them what's wrong. Now and then just pull the rug out from under them and tell them you like something. It can really help a lot, actually. So we are critics as testers. The bug reports, this is why it's very important for bug reports to be neutral wording and be specific and detailed. Now, if you have, say, a recurring bug from a developer, perhaps every time they deliver something, you find it's got boundary bugs. They're never checking their own boundaries. And they could easily do that. Well, you might use the DASR script and say, when I got that latest release from you, I found yet another 3 boundary bugs in it. And when I found those, I thought it's very frustrating because these are things that you could easily check yourself. What I'd like to do is to perhaps work with you to help you improve checking your own boundaries. I could give you a checklist, perhaps. Something like that. And the other example of criticizing your boss, that could be a career-limiting move to criticize your boss, right? But if you use DASR and pull style, which I'm coming to shortly, that can be effective. But the key thing here is to identify common goals. So advice for giving criticism, some do's and don'ts. Before you criticize, make sure you've gathered all the facts, because there's nothing worse than coming with to say something and finding out you were wrong because you had neglected to investigate it properly. Be open to their view. I mean, criticism should not be something you're just dumping on somebody. It should be the start of a dialogue. Maybe an uncomfortable dialogue, but it should nonetheless be a dialogue. And want the other person to succeed. You're doing this in their best interest. So be specific about what you would like to improve and work through an action plan to implement the improvements. Some don'ts. Don't get angry. Don't use sarcasm or jokes. That always backfires. Don't want the person to feel bad. Don't be vague. Don't be overly general. Don't use the words always or never. But focus on a specific instance, because then it's easier to implement something specific to improve. And don't walk away after criticizing, because you want to have an action plan. You both want to have the same goal of trying to get that person to improve. So don't just say, right, I've told you I'm going now, but get their reaction, give them a chance to maybe say what they think, or maybe explain a situation. There might be something going on in their home life that you had no idea about. They had become careless because perhaps they've just found out their mother has cancer or something like that. We often are not aware of what's going on in people's personal lives. Okay, well, that's criticism. Now, the second C is communication. Now, communication is a way of giving information. So it might be conveying knowledge, making something known. I mean, I'm standing here in front of you all. It's a very impressive place to stand. Am I communicating with you? I'm pleased to see some people nodding their heads or saying yes. But I may not be communicating with everybody. If there are people checking email on their phones or people who are distracted by something else, I'm not communicating, but I'm still standing here talking. So talking is not communicating. Communicating is two-way. So, this is one form of communication where it's mainly me talking and you listening, but there's also a form of communication where you are going much more back and forth in a dialogue. So speaking and listening are both important, and you can only communicate with people if they let you. Anybody here have teenagers? Try communicating with them. Yes, mine are past that now, thankfully, but yes, it's definitely difficult to communicate with teenagers if you're their parent. Larry King said, I remind myself every morning that nothing I say today will teach me anything. Nothing I say will teach me anything. So if I'm going to learn, I must do it by listening. That's really interesting. So, different ways of communicating. Have you heard of this 7% rule? Where the words account for 7% of a message, the tone of voice is 38%, and body language is 55%. So let me illustrate this. So supposing I found a bug. I'm a tester. And I'm going to go and tell the developer about it. So I'm going to go up to them and I'm going to say, there seems to be a problem in this program of yours. Okay. Supposing I went up to the programmer and I said, there seems to be a problem in this program of yours. Was that any different? It was the same words. Have you ever had an email that you sent in the first sense and that got received in the second? That's why email is a bad form of communication, actually. So how do we communicate? Well, we have different levels, if you like, of communication. And email or written is probably the least useful and the most open to misinterpretation. Even though you think if it's written down, it must be clear. But it depends partly on the communication. Verbal, like over the phone, that's better than email. If you have like FaceTime or Skype, I love FaceTiming my sister in the States. It's absolutely wonderful. And face-to-face, of course, is the best way to communicate with another person. So I want to look now at push style and pull style, which are ways of conveying information. So push style The rationale behind push style is that people are convinced by convincing arguments, by numbers, by a convincing proposal, by all the facts that you have assembled. The key to success is the information that you've got ready. And you have a proposal and you're saying, this is what we should do, this is what we need to do, and here's why. So you try as much as you can to convince people that your idea is the best way to go forward. Now, it's not based on common ground, it's based on this is what we should do. And sometimes people are really passionate about that, and that's fine. I mean, that's good. Passion is good, especially in testing. And push style can be very effective, particularly if there's immaturity or dependency. If you have a new employee starting a new job, they don't want pull style, they want push style. What do you want me to do on my first day? How should I do this? How do I test this? How do I use this tool? So they need information that you just tell them. So push style is the way to go for that. If you're talking to people and your proposal is, I mean, where should we go for dinner? And if the person you're talking to doesn't really care, I mean, then you can say, well, I think we should go here. Fine. If there's a high degree of trust with people who trust your judgment, they will accept things from you as just saying, this is what I think we should do. Or if you're the expert. But wasn't that video good? That was in the previous presentation about, well, you're the expert, but whenever he tried to say something, he just got shot down by the managers. Oh, that was fabulous video. Not that sort of recognition of expertise. Now, pull style is actually a bit more difficult. And the rationale behind pull style is that people are influenced by uncovering their needs and finding common ground. So the key to success is actually the quality of the questions that are asked. So you're looking for common ground, you're building on ideas, and seeking, your proposals are things that will align with whoever it is you're talking to. So you're building relationships. And pull style is effective if there are strong opinions. Have you ever been in a meeting where if there are 5 people in the room, there are probably 6 really strong opinions? I mean, when there are really, and people like to fight and argue, well, using pull style can be a way to get things going in that sort of situation, rather than everybody saying, yes, we should do this, no, we should do that, no, we should do that. If you use pull style, you can perhaps begin to find common ground and actually come to a resolution. So if there's no threat in someone accepting your proposal, if there is a threat to someone accepting your proposal, then pull style would be a better way to go. If there's uncertainty, if you don't know which way the wind is going to blow in a given meeting, if you ask a question, you're not committing yourself yet. If the relationship is new, or there's a bit of mistrust, or if push style has failed, then pull style might be a good thing to do. And if the influence needs a longer lasting effect, pull style is usually better. And, very important, one area where pull style is effective if you're communicating with people senior to you. If you go into your manager or high-level manager and say, this is what we should do, well, some managers might accept it, recognizing your expertise, but other managers might not. But if you go and ask questions, well, best thing is to give you some examples, actually. So here's some examples of push and pull. So I'm going to be, on this side I'll be push, and on that side I'll be pull, and in the middle I'll be the manager. So first example, hey boss, I want to tell you something. I know we said we would get the testing done in 2 weeks, but there's no way we can possibly get it done in 2 weeks. We would have to have 3. Manager. 3 weeks? You must be joking. Oh, you testers, you're all the same. And the development's a bit behind, so actually you only got a week. Let's try pull style. Hey boss, I'd like to ask you something. Remember sort of the project before last, where we cut short on the testing, and when it went out, there were really a lot of bugs in it, and we actually lost that major customer. Do you remember that? Well, in that situation, that's because the testing was cut short. And I've discovered with this one, the 2 weeks isn't going to be enough. And I'm just asking whether it's okay to take that risk that we lose another major customer. I remember that project. Oh, that was terrible. Ooh, no, we don't want that again. Oh dear, I mean, my job was on the... Yeah, okay, you can have an extra week. Get the difference? Okay, let's try another one. Push style. Hey boss, I want to tell you something. We haven't got enough testers. We need another tester. What do you mean you need another? I gave you one 3 years ago. What are you talking about? No. Let's try pull style. Hey boss, we're really pleased that you gave us the extra tester 3 years ago, but our work has been building up quite significantly, and we are really struggling with the staff we have, and it would be, I know you probably can't, but it would be useful if we could have another person in the team. But what I really wanted to ask you was, how important is that deadline? Because I don't think we're going to be able to meet it if we don't get extra staff. Deadline? Deadline? My bonus is based on the deadline. We can't compromise the deadline. Okay, you can have somebody. Want another couple examples? Here's one that might be counterintuitive. Hey boss, I want to tell you something. We need to perform the tests in this specific order. That's the best way to do those tests. Oh, okay. You're the expert. Hey boss, I want to ask you something. We've got all these tests and we don't know what order to do them in. What order should we perform the tests in? Well, that's your job. That's not my job. That's a technical issue. Sometimes push style is better. One final one. Hey boss, I want to tell you something. This test environment we got is not good enough. It's just not, we have to get more space in the cloud, we have to get more visualization. We just haven't got the right environments, haven't got enough devices to do the testing. We have to get more. Get more? Do you know how the budgets are like on this project? Of course we haven't got any money for more environments or more visualization and stuff like that. Go away. Hey boss, I want to ask you something. Do you remember last year when we released the software and a lot of our customers found that it didn't work on their devices? Well, it turns out that the environments we have available to us now only cover about 50% of the devices that our customers most commonly use. And I'm just asking whether it's okay if we don't catch these bugs on the other devices, as happened last time. Oh yeah, I remember that. That was bad. We lost a few customers then as well. We can't risk doing that again because that would really harm the reputation of the company. So, okay, just let me know what you need. Okay, well that's the end of the acting. Thank you. I don't know if you noticed how they all started. The push style all started, hey boss, I want to tell you something. And that is the essence of push style. It's telling. I know best, here are the facts. The pull style started with, hey boss, I want to ask you something. So we're looking at risks, we're looking at common ground, we're looking at this manager's hot buttons. So we're creating a common link with them, and we're just asking. We're not saying we're going to have this problem, but is it okay if we miss this deadline or whatever? It is a much more effective way of communicating with higher level managers, or with a lot of other people as well in the other situations that we mentioned. So that's push and pull. So if push has failed for you, I would recommend you try pull style. Now this is another very interesting communication model which comes from Virginia Satir. And when you hear something, you have your sensory input from your ears or maybe your eyes, then there's an interpretation that goes on in your brain. There's some significance to what's being said, and there are feelings about what's being said, and sometimes there are feelings about the feelings, because you might get angry, and then you feel guilty about getting angry. And then there are defenses that might go up, and then you might have rules for responding to whatever's being said. So then you have your response. So that goes round on the other side and goes through the same phases with the other person, going through exactly the same thing and coming back again. Have you ever had the experience where you say something to somebody and, well, that was out of left field. How on earth did that response come? It's because of what's going on inside their brains. The thing is that what we see is only this. We don't see what's going on in somebody's head. We just see the responses. And here's an example of one that I observed. Is it okay to go ahead with this? We have something that we've been talking around it for a while. We've discussed some aspects of it, but now I think it's time to go ahead. Well, I have a major concern. I'm worried about this. I don't think they've thought it through properly. I know we've discussed some aspects of it before, but there are other things. So it's my job to assess things. I'm the monitor evaluator on the team. I have to tell of my concern. So here is a risk. The other person here is a risk and says, oh, he doesn't like my idea, eh? Oh, okay. Yeah, they're feeling threatened, okay? I think we've already agreed this, and we have to get things done. We're never getting things done. We're always looking at these risky things. It's terrible. We have to stop rediscussing it. We've already agreed it anyway. Maybe that's not quite true. And that comes to the other side. We've already agreed it. They're ignoring risks. Actually, they're ignoring me. They don't value my strengths. They don't value what I bring to the team. They think I'm worthless. So what's the point in responding? Okay. This was a real one. Now that's not communication, that's capitulation. They've just given in. Okay, now we come to confidence. How am I doing for time? Oops. Confidence. Think back to a time when you last felt very confident about something. Maybe a situation at work, or maybe you were skiing. Okay. How does it feel? Feel good? Did you find your shoulders going back? Definitions of confidence: assurance, being sure about decisions, freedom from doubt, belief in yourself, a state of hopefulness that events will turn out all right. Not worrying whether you did the right thing or not, but just doing it and not looking back. That's all confidence. So where are you on this line of underconfident, confident, or overconfident? If you're underconfident, you might be constantly putting yourself down. If you have negative criticism, you take it very personally. It devastates you. You dwell on it. You make it more than it was intended. If someone praises you for something, you don't take it in. Oh, it's nothing. You don't actually appreciate it. It was one-off. It was luck. Your confidence is easily damaged and easily crushed. You limit yourself. You have low ambition. And you don't take action. You're risk-averse. That's underconfident. If you're overconfident, you blow your own trumpet. You ignore negative criticism. You blame everyone else. You expect and seek praise. You're very defensive if you're ever criticized. You tend to be attacking and closed. And your ambition often outstrips your ability. Have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? The Dunning-Kruger effect, the tendency for some people to substantially overestimate their abilities. The less competent people are, the more they overestimate their abilities. Is anyone thinking of a president they know of some country somewhere across the ocean? I haven't mentioned any names. Or are you confident? Negative and positive communication are evaluated objectively. You're able to prove yourself to yourself, and you enjoy your successes. You happily give credit to other people, and you're open. You seek feedback and act on it, and you're realistic. So what kind of a tester are you? If you're underconfident, oh, that's not reproducible, that's not a defect? Oh, okay, you just give in. You don't stand up for the users. Maybe you have a martyr complex. What about overconfident? Well, you're antagonistic. You offend people needlessly. I know best. And if you're confident, you report bugs objectively. You know your value to the organization. Test manager, Underconfident doesn't defend estimates, doesn't defend the team, doesn't enforce a done criteria or entry criteria. If you're overconfident, you don't listen to others, testers, users, or developers. You're inflexible. You often have needless battles with people. And if you're confident, you stand firm. You're under pressure. You defend your team. You're a good negotiator. Now, would you like to be more confident? Yeah, a lot of people would like to be more confident. There's some good news for you. And that is, you can be. Now, sometimes you will be in a situation where you have to look confident, where people have to have confidence in you. But your external confidence needn't match your internal confidence. You can pretend. It's very effective. You can learn to act confident. And the good thing is, the more you act it, the more confident you will actually become. Practice feeling confident. Visualize being confident. As you think, so shall you be. It's your mind that controls these. And only you control your mind. So another thing is to take action and take risks. And that's a very interesting thing. So how to become more confident? Perhaps increasing competence, training, recognition, measured achievement of goals. But the main thing is to change your view of yourself. This is another great quote. The greatest discovery of our generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. So appreciate yourself. Give yourself permission to say, hey, yeah, I'm pretty good at that. Find a mentor who will help boost your confidence. And visualize. That's really important. And also take action and be prepared to fail and then bounce back. It's interesting that a lack of confidence causes inaction, and inaction causes a lack of confidence. I'm going to skip this one and go to the summary, and then we have a summary of the confidence after this. There will be some points about that book in the slide deck. So we've looked at three aspects: communication and criticism. We've looked at push-pull style. We've looked at two-way communication. And we've looked at the DASR script, describe the effect it has on you, specify an action, and reaffirm their worth. Now, when you're criticizing someone, bear in mind how confident they are. Because a criticism which is just sort of neutral to a confident person might be devastating to an underconfident person, and to an overconfident person might just be totally ignored. So be aware of the confidence of the person you're criticizing. So be sensitive to those that you criticize, be aware of those you communicate with, and remember that the appearance of confidence inspires confidence and grows confidence, and so does taking actions. So I hope that these three things, these three C's, will help you become a better tester. And speaking of confidence, I have a summary of the confidence, and I'm as a song. You remember Sound of Music? I have confidence in testing. I have confidence in teams. I'm quite confident that I can do this job, besides which I think I have confidence in me. Sometimes I'm not so certain. Should I say what I think? Is my idea good enough, or will they just think it's not? I wonder, someone else has just decided, but I don't think that this can be. I have doubts, but should I mention them right now? Because as you see, I'm not confident in me. Now I see it all went badly, of the way I had foreseen. If I'd spoken up, we might not be here now, so maybe it's right to have confidence in me. Somehow I'll find the courage, I'll take a risk next time. And my ideas, all those good ones, they are okay, and so am I. With each meeting I'm more certain my ideas are just fine. I have confidence to be who I can be. 'Cause now, as you see, I have confidence in me. Thank you very much.